Coming at you live from all over Ohio. A Cleveland Browns podcast full of laughs, rants, fun, and stats. A place where all Browns fans' voices are welcome and heard. A show that aims to inform and entertain you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Barking Browns Show.
What's going on, everybody? Happy Thursday to you. Welcome into episode 111 of the Barking Browns Show. I'm Jacob. That's Nick. We're going to fist bump. We're in 3, 2, 1. Look at that. Fucking A. All right. Man, I already burned our one F-bomb for the show. All right. So we are starting off with a bang, guys. We're brought to you, as always, by our friends over at Homage Apparel. Nick's got the old school Brownie the Elf. I've got the new school Brownie the Elf. There's a link in the description down below if you want to check these out. Softest shirts on the planet. Trust me when I say that. If you want to get in on some of our rumors, and a lot of content is firing up right now. Over on our Discord, there's Zach and his team of the sports betting is making it worth your $10. So for your $10 a month down there, that team's posting winners every single day over there. It makes up for the money. It pays for itself and all that good stuff. And it's just been, wow, what a great minute it's been of television. Nick, how are you doing this evening?
Hi. So it's still crazy to me that we're in triple digits of the show now. I don't even know how to feel about that. I love it. And all of a sudden, this is one of my favorite episodes that we've done. Like, we're starting to really develop traditions on this show. The roster prediction episode is one of my favorite because we are in a rubber match. I won the first one. You won the second one. And we're going to see, because we've brought a couple of friends along, which we'll show here soon, to do it along with us. So slowly but surely, just up in the ante every year. And for those wondering, we did put out the poll. For everybody who joined us last week that was wondering, so the punishment that we're going to be doing is I ride with 6. So anytime we're talking Browns quarterbacks, there's going to be a lot of I ride with 6 said in our upcoming episode. So Jacob's face about says how he feels about that one. And fear not, because you guys came up with great suggestions. And so we are going to use the chosen tweets in a later bet. Because you guys voted, you gave us your honest feedback, so we're going to do it, right? There's going to be lots of I-Rives, but in the future, one of us is going to get a hold of all kinds of fun, saucy things to say. So I can't wait to see what that's going to be. I'm just excited, Jacob. I love the roster. It's now we're really. I was watching NFL Live today, and the Browns are like 15 days away from
2 weeks. 2 weeks. The Hall of Fame game is 2 weeks from tonight.
Hall of Fame game. That's August crazy. 3rd. All right. I'm ready.
Yeah, August 3rd. The rookies and quarterbacks got some time on the field today. There were some images posted by the Browns here at the end of the day. That was pretty cool. There's like a good chance that this coming weekend, potentially, I'll be being shot with a paintball gun 6 times. I don't know. We're getting there. It's coming. We got Drew. We got Mitch. We got MC. We got all of our friends hanging out over here. Drew said if anybody needs a flamethrower, he has one and he can ship it to you. Well, I know 2 guys that might want a flamethrower, and they're coming on here in just a couple of seconds here. And I see them nodding. Well, one of them. Anyway, so, guys, we really appreciate you guys joining us for the 53-man roster. So we're going to talk about some other stuff real quick, and we'll get into it. But we're going to go ahead and bring on our 2 friends from Dog Pound Daily, Randy Gurzi and Casey Kinnamon. Let's see if we can do it. Can we do it? Can we do it? Hello?
Hey, there it is. We've done it.
We're now switched from where we were on the pre-show. So if we do try to do the fist bump, there's no way it's happening right now. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Look at it.
Yeah. No, I don't have an excuse when I screw it up.
All right. It's just like. All right.
That was the worst 4-man fist bump ever.
I put it over. I don't even I'm not even supposed to go up, so I don't even know what we were doing there. So it
was close-ish.
Yeah, close-ish. All right, so we're going to start, I think, with Perion Winfrey. I think it's a place to start since we're doing 53-man roster prediction tonight, which will be the majority of the show. So, so we'll start with Perion Winfrey. I'll do what I what I want to say, and then we'll go around the clock. Randy, Casey, Nick, we'll go around the circle here. I wanted to bring this up because I talked about this pre-show. Our friend Noah, let's bring this up over at Sports Illustrated. He tweeted this out, which I thought was interesting. He said weeks ago he was told by several Browns players, or he was told that several Browns players have grown very hesitant to even be seen out in public with Perion Winfrey. So apparently that was a situation. Players didn't think he'd last on the roster this long, and Tuesday's alleged incident was apparently the final straw. From being in the middle of a screaming match last season, which we knew, to showing up to practice late, to being in trouble with the law on multiple different occasions, the team decided, like, man, it sucks because you look at a player in Perion Winfrey that had the talent, had the upside, seemed to have the attitude in terms of like embracing, the hard work. At least that's what he said, and did all the barking and all that stuff. So it sucks to see someone not be able to get out of their own way. But I think when the first run-in with the law, and now we've been told, Drew likes to call him Scooter because he allegedly wrecked his scooter. It turns out he did not wreck a scooter. He actually wrecked his car because he doesn't know how to drive in the snow, and they thought that would be really embarrassing, so they said that he wrecked the scooter, which I don't know. I think the scooter is actually more embarrassing. I think I would have gone with that I wrecked my car because I don't know how to drive in the snow. I think that one was actually what I would have gone with. But you had all that, and it's all summed up to say a guy that was hanging on the thread that I thought when he had that run-in with the law, that this offseason, after everything that happened last year with the incident and the being late and the shouting matches, it showed me that there was just nothing seemed to be getting through to him. So while I'm like sad about it, I'm not surprised at all.
I remember our episodes and shows from last year. If you go back, you'll probably hear us talking about Perion Winfrey as potentially being a second round pick, and talking about the Browns looking at him in the second round, and just the shock that we had when he fell to the fourth round. And something we were talking about pre-show, and Randy, something I probably need to learn a lesson about is not every time a guy falls does not necessarily mean it's a home run. There may be some reasons behind that, and as the homer I am, maybe I should learn that lesson. But it sucks. It sucks that you always want to see these draft picks work out, and I think we had good reason to be excited about him from a talent perspective. And yeah, he really won the hearts of Cleveland with that barking video. We went crazy. We had those X-ray pictures with the dog. The
MRI. He got that dog in it.
Right? Like, people were going crazy. I got to Winfrey jerseys, the whole thing. It sucks, but at least it was a fourth round pick. It's not like the Browns defensive line was particularly exciting last year. I do think Winfrey had shown some promise, but it is what it is. You move on and you bite the bullet, say, okay, we gave this a shot. I think there was upside there to justify taking him in the fourth round. So, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, and I'll say, Nick, like it's one thing to get excited. But I remember I tweeted something out when he was selected that, hey, there's a lot of talent there, but you got to wonder why he fell into the fourth round. And there were some people that were, ready to crucify me for even suggesting that Andrew Berry made a steal. It was the greatest draft pick ever. And it's like, no, I think he's a very talented player. But they fall for a reason. I'm okay with them taking the shot as well because, the talent was there. I was totally good with that. I remember I went absolutely off the rock. Like, I went crazy when they traded up in 2018 for Antonio Callaway. I don't think you trade up for a player that has questions, that character concerns, and that really made me upset. I'm like, you don't use 2 draft picks on a guy that is probably not going to make the team, at least not long term. Callaway, sure enough, was gone within a year. He had off field issues this year, getting arrested. But yeah. I felt the same way, like you'd said, Jacob. I thought after the first time that he got in trouble with the law, they really should have just, cut the bait then. You knew it wasn't going to work at that point.
7 words. Be who you can afford to be. And Buddy would have had to been Aaron Donald to be putting up with this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't disagree with taking the shot, you know what I mean? But this is also, you cut your losses, but you don't just do it because he ran. You got to show the rest of the locker room what's acceptable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And honestly, he should have been gone before this. This should have been something that isn't on the Browns' ledger. It should have been earlier this summer when he did what he did earlier this summer and went live with everybody, and they found out he was down in Texas doing whatever. Cut your losses, man. And I think as a GM, you have to learn that. And we're going to find out a lot about Andrew Berry over the next couple of weeks. Just he really hasn't had to let go of many of his players. You know, Richie LeCount, Winfrey. It's a small list, and there's going to be a lot of them come off. I just don't. They got to know when to fold them earlier. You know what I mean? And I wish Perry.
Anthony Schwartz. Sorry.
Do you need
I wish Perry on well, but you know, unless he gets some really good advice and is ready to take it in his ear and really understand the weight of his actions, we're going to see other things happen. It is going to end really bad.
I don't think anybody even consider, because he cleared waivers today, so I don't think anybody even considers him until this is kind of whatever happens from this situation is resolved. I had heard a rumor that he's not allowed on Oklahoma's campus. Like, that was a thing. I can't confirm that because I don't know anybody in Norman, but like, is Norman where Oklahoma is? Am I stupid?
Yeah.
Okay, it is. Okay.
Yes and yes.
Yeah, well, but real quick, I want to get to some of the comments on the situation here over in the comment section. Josh says he's someone who added all the talent and charisma, but let it get to his head. I mean, that's probably part of it. It's probably Drew says he'll never be Oprah rich now. That's got to be really careful of a guy when he falls due to character. You're starting to see that come up now. Josh was big on Perion. He wanted to see him eat some humble pie. Comparing his situation to Watson, that's always fun.
Hey, Jacob. Oh, sorry, I didn't know we.
I know you're good, man.
I just want to say on a little bit of a brighter note, that helmet behind you bears a quite a similar resemblance to the new one that the Browns unveiled.
That's my Nick Chubb signed helmet here.
On the day that he signed, which
He
is
did.
funny.
He signed his extension right after I bought that at training camp. What was that? 2021.
2 years ago? Yeah.
It was 2 years ago. Yeah, that was the year that they weren't allowed to sign autographs and stuff, but David Njoku started signing, because of COVID restrictions. There were still some COVID restrictions in place, and David Njoku came over and was signing a bunch of kids stuff, and they were like, "No, David, you can't do that," and dragged him away, and it's just because technically they were not allowed. All right, go ahead.
Some people get on me about uniforms and say they're no big deal, but I'm excited that the Browns are going to wear them 3 times a year, and I think they're awesome. I just want to know, big deal or not big deal? What do you guys think?
I think everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but that opinion is dead wrong. Uniforms matter. I go overboard with them.
Uniform lives matter.
Uniform. I mean, I love the throwback uniforms. I love the alternate uniforms, and I think that the Browns, they knocked it out of the park with this. I absolutely love it. I know some people are going to be upset because it's not the classic orange, but it's they're not going away from it. They're just sprinkling something else in that's going to be really clean and really cool to look at. So, I mean, I went nuts. I loved it.
Okay.
If you were going to pivot away from the orange helmet, that's exactly how you do it.
Yep.
You know what I mean? That clean classic look. It's just reversed. You know what I mean? And it just goes so well with those 46 throwbacks. I mean, that is with the white socks, white pants. Just think about that. Monday Night Football, the contrast between them and the Steelers, the way the jersey is going to look at night, it's going to pop. And when we put a beat down on them, oh, man, those jerseys, it's going to be a seller. I believe that.
I'm excited about it, and I'm hit or miss on being a big jersey guy. The only thing is I don't like the all orange, the orange jerseys. Nick knows this, that I'm not really a big orange jersey person. So that's kind of where I debate, but I loved those throwbacks. I had a Baker throwback. I bought that the day of the Arizona Cardinals loss. That was a thing that I did. And Nick was drunk, screaming about it. Didn't matter if we had an effing. He said, "Why do we even have an effing head coach and an effing offensive coordinator? They didn't have one, and they ran all over us all
I'm not
day."
bitter.
And that was true because Kingsbury and his OC were in COVID protocol for that game, if you guys forget. So that was actually true. And that was also the day our good friend Kyle Pringle got lost in the parking deck trying to find his car so he could drive back to Alabama. So that was a day, man. That was a day.
I love the new dog, love the new colors. It's fun, it's exciting, and if the Browns win, I bet everybody's going to be excited about it too. It seems like it was pretty positively received, so at least that's something that the Browns really seem to be nailing. It's just nice little things.
And the people who get mad about that, they must live really boring lives if they just want the same old thing over and over. Like, come on, have a little bit of fun.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay. And I mean, at least it's not the Colts uniform because that thing is.
I was about to bring that up.
I don't know what's worse, that or the Lions one. Like, I don't hate the Lions logo they use, but putting it with that ugly.
I actually haven't seen the Lions one. Apparently,
Google it. It's not beautiful.
It's not good.
The Browns,
no, it's not good.
The Browns get. By the way, you get to be assaulted because the Colts are wearing those jerseys against the Browns.
Yeah, I don't know.
That.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what they did to deserve that.
So the Browns get Seattle in their throwbacks.
Yeah. Those are beautiful. Those are good too.
Oh, they're so beautiful. They get them in the throwbacks. They get the Colts in the throwbacks, and I think there's one more. I think they're playing 3 teams using alternate jerseys and stuff, which is, I think it's cool. Just from my standpoint, except for the Colts one, because I'm going to be very offended by it. But I don't know. I like the helmet more than some people. Like the black helmet with the blue horseshoe. I actually don't hate that. But then when you pair it with the jersey, it's like, nah.
Yeah,
and they all have C patches. It's not a caption patch. It's just all of them have that C patch.
I'll say one last thing about the white jerseys, though. The one good thing that came out of it got Bengals fans all in their feelings.
No,
it sure did.
Man, that was just fun to watch. Just let them go at it. And then we meet up week 1. So, anything that can ramp that up leading into the season opener, I'm all for.
You touch on a great point, Casey, and I got to say this. How are you, as a Cincinnati Bengals franchise that did not exist when the Browns were wearing white, going to complain
for over 20 years?
How are you going to complain about Cleveland going back and using their colors that they entered the NFL with? The literal unveiling video touches back to the Browns' history and says,
in the 1940s.
This is where this is from. And so you, Cincinnati, who didn't even exist then, are going to have some kind of gripe? Excuse me.
Do you know what my favorite part of that was? My favorite part of that was the Bengals had the audacity from their official account to tweet out, raise your hand if you were founded by Paul Brown. To which I'm like, hold up. How about, and I saw other people say this before I did, you raise your hand if you were founded by Paul Brown and actually won some championships.
Ooh. Oh, that's awesome.
Because but just to be like, well, if you're founded by Paul Brown, are you freaking? Are you stupid? Are you dense? What? Are you serious?
They should just both take the field in their white jerseys, play each other, and settle it that way.
Why not?
Yeah.
Winner gets to keep it. Winner gets to keep the white jerseys.
I think the move now is that's still their stadium name. They dropped the Paul Brown Stadium. We're open for business.
Hey.
That should be Paul Brown Stadium.
Paul Brown Stadium, please.
Let's take their stadium name right now. Put a statue out front. What are you going to do about it?
I would love that so much.
We are so off the rails right now. Okay. All right. So we are here to do our 53-man roster competition. I want to lay a couple of ground rules for everybody that hasn't watched the show in the previous 2 years. But also something that I've been thinking about a lot because it affected me, and I think it affected Nick as well, in the last 2 competitions. And that is, if somebody goes on IR during camp, you can replace them. If in my case, I was able to do it once last year because he hurt himself literally the second day of camp, and that was Isaiah Weston. So I put Isaiah Weston on my 53, and then he tore his ACL. So I was allowed to replace him last year, but I wanted to make that clear. If that happens to any of your players on the 53, you can replace them with somebody else if it's a season-ending injury, because do we really know if they were going to make the roster or not? Most of the time we don't. I mean, like even in Isaiah Weston's, he had a really great shot because nobody else could run a freaking vertical route last year. So like, other than like Amari and DPJ, but like he was on
was awful.
Especially when you looked at it from strictly a speed, like not even looking at other parts of the receiving core, just strictly straight line speed. It was bad. So. And then that was even when I believed in Anthony Schwartz. All right, so that is a ground rule that I just wanted to place out there just for everybody. We did say that the loser will have to say I ride with 6 anytime Deshaun Watson is mentioned for the remainder of the season.
Oh, man.
Remainder of the season. That's a lot.
There's going to be a lot of ride with 6s.
And that means, especially if I'm the loser, I will not say his name for weeks at a time. Because I know what's going to happen. He's going to slide into my tweets even, and he's going to say something to me. And he's going to be like, I need an I ride with 6 at the end of this. So without Vadim, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to do it in the order in which it was sent to me that I have it. So it would be me first, Randy, Casey, and then Nick. Except there's one time when I randomly animated Nick's before Casey's. So that'll happen. A lot of them
inexcusable.
Yeah. Well. Why are you surprised? Yeah. So we'll go through that. There's several rooms where we're the same. What I want to do is we'll go in order as we unveil them and just talk about them a little bit. And then after that, if somebody has something they want to like rebuttal, like if I have a player you want to comment on that after everybody's talked about their list, we'll do that as well. So anybody that wants to do that, because I have seen all of the 53-man rosters and I have questions. So let's do it. We're going to start. We'll start here in the quarterback room. I don't even know that we really need to say anything about the quarterback room. We all had the same quarterback rooms, so that's why it is the way that it is. I think it's a no-brainer now with the new third quarterback rule. And me and Casey were actually talking about this pre-show with Nick as well before Randy got on. But it's just like he left Josh Dobbs off for a second and then was like, wait, looked at the third quarterback rule. Was like, especially not to mention that Josh Dobbs' contract is fully guaranteed as well. So just a side note on that. But is there anything anybody wants to say? I think as far as quarterbacks, in terms of styles, all three of them play the exact same style. Well, not exact same, because Dorian Thompson-Robinson and Josh Dobbs are actually going to run more than Deshaun Watson will. But they're the same, very similar quarterbacks. Is anybody got anything they want to say about the quarterback room?
I just really like that if the quarterback room goes this way and DTR is on the roster, which I assume he will be, I like that they're giving the young guy a real chance to just learn, develop, be here. Not just a practice squad guy, like he's going to be on the roster and be able to have that experience. Like I'm excited about that. When I was doing this roster, that's something that stuck out to me.
Yeah, and I would agree that I feel like he's an absolute lock to make the team. I know you touched on Josh Dobbs being, fully guaranteed at $2 million. $2 million guaranteed to a billionaire isn't what everybody thinks it is.
Yeah, that's fair.
Saying same thing about Marquise Goodwin, like, oh, he's got a $400,000 guarantee. He's good, absolutely going to make the team. Like, oh, no, teams have eaten more than that before. So, but it's saying that I think Kellen Mond, would have to really show out to be able to, make that happen. But I think in the end, it's going to be these three guys, and I think it's a really, really talented quarterback room.
If you remember last year, they were able to let go of Dobbs and let him take his little journey. But if you love something and it comes back to you, it's true love. So yeah. I think they got the right guy to back up Watson. They have the same offseason quarterback coach. He'll be a good sounding board. You know what I mean? So I think that this quarterback room is going to give us a fun preseason. I think that's the thing to look forward to.
I'm excited for the return of preseason Josh Dobbs, because that was a lot of fun last year.
Well, I was saying if everyone thought that Josh Dobbs was a lot of fun, they're going to go crazy for Dorian Thompson-Robinson because I think
he's going to run way more.
And I think he's a much better athlete than Josh Dobbs. Even Josh Dobbs was never a run-first guy at Tennessee. He's was more of a pocket passer. So I think DTR is a run-first guy, and I think that he's going to be a lot of fun to watch in the preseason.
It's really funny that Drew's like, what the hell with Kellen Mond on the 53? I think they really thought somebody else was going to claim him. Was going to snatch him. So they claimed him. And because they claimed him, they had to put him on the 53 instead of being able to stick him to the practice squad. And I think they just kind of overreacted. And then he got to town and they're like, oh, this guy fucking stinks. Anyway.
I think they like him better than people realize because I don't think you cut Josh Dobbs and keep Kellen Mond at that point if you don't have some kind of faith in him. I think they like Kellen Mond. I think they saw something there, but I think in the end it's not going to be enough to save him. I think the other three are still better.
Fair enough. All right, let's go to the quarterback room or the running back room. That's not the running back room. That is. All right. So my running back room comes up from the bottom there. It's funny. I'm just going to bring them all on because it's all the same. And that's just Nick Chubb, Jerome Ford, and Demetric Felton. I don't think there's a lot to say about this. I'm excited about Jerome Ford. I'm excited about year 2 with him and finally getting some real touches. I mean, he only had 8 carries for 14 yards, although he had some fun kick return stuff that I thought was really fun. Demetric Felton, it feels like there's still a chance that somebody gets cut at the end of camp that becomes the third running back for them instead of it being Demetric Felton. But I made the mistake right after the draft. I made the mistake of doing a 53-man roster that included somebody not on the roster. So I did a 53-man roster for Browns Wire right after the draft. And I put Jerick McKinnon in there. And then the next day he re-signs in Kansas City. And I'm like, great. So I was trying to project it. And I think because of that, and we've got a question, do they get a vet to back up Chubb or let Ford get the touches? So I think when that happened and it played out the way it's played out, they do have Hassan Hall, the undrafted rookie free agent that could be interesting and make some noise. They've always treated Felton as a wide receiver before now. I think he becomes that third down scat back receiver. I think they're going to put Elijah Moore in the backfield a lot too. So I think that's part of it. I don't think that the third running back on this team is going to have a very big role barring an injury. So I think they feel comfortable with it being Demetric Felton.
I have to apologize because I was really sipping the Hassan Hall Kool-Aid once upon a time in our shows. And I said, I thought he would make the roster, but when I sat down to really do this, I feel like they're not going to want to use Jerome Ford in the return game like they did last year, despite the fact that he was good at it. Because if he's RB2, it just doesn't feel like a prudent practice to use him in that role. So Felton at least has shown they've used him before, and I think depending on your feelings about Jakeem Grant, no spoilers please, but Demetric Felton might fill a role that they may need that they may not be able to have space for otherwise. So I think it makes sense that he would be, especially because, if I'm not sure if they're going to use Chubb as a pass catcher more or not, but we've seen Felton be able to really have a role there. So it makes sense to have 2 guys behind Chubb that are both more comfortable catching the ball than we've seen them use Chubb. So I think that's why ultimately I ended up on Felton over Hall.
And I'll say this, Nick, I've kind of felt like kind of opposite of you there. I felt like Hassan Hall, I haven't been too enamored with Felton has done in the return game, whereas Hassan Hall had 2,500 yards, kick returns, and 2 touchdowns in his collegiate career. So I kind of originally was thinking Hall could make the roster because of his ability as a kick returner. So I think that if we see him in the preseason go out there, see him, put up some impressive returns, he probably could edge Felton out. Because you got to remember when Felton did get a chance on the field, he had the butterfingers. He had a lot of fumbles. So I think that right now I have him there for the same reasons Jacob was saying. He's kind of that scat back. I think it'll help him to focus on just one position rather than receiver. I never thought he was a great receiver. He was much better catching it out of the backfield. But I think, I think that his leash is a little bit short because of the mistakes that he made on the field this last year. So I wouldn't be surprised if Hassan Hall went out there and looked good in kick returns if they think, maybe this is the guy we want to keep there. Because, again, I also agree, I don't think the third running back is going to have a huge role.
This is Demetric Felton's 8-mile moment here. This is one shot. This is it now. And this week I kind of broke. I was just watching film between Hassan Hall and Demetric Felton, and even the Senior Bowl tape on Demetric Felton as a wide receiver. I just think he brings more in the passing game. And I was just honestly watching the tape with him and DTR. Yeah. I think they're going to make each other look good in the preseason. I think there's going to be a lot to build on there. Watching him run the Texas route, man, he makes linebackers look foolish, And this is his skill set. This is his one thing that he can do. Is it going to be pass protection? I think that's what it comes down to. So if I look at the roster right now, it's either going to be Demetric Felton as the third running back or a guy who's not even on the roster. I think there could be a guy cut elsewhere. So you could see Demetric make the final 53 and then just get immediately dumped for another guy. I think that could be an outcome.
Especially if it's another guy that's been here before. Like something like I'm not predicting it, but like there's a lot of running backs in Jacksonville. Like there's some good players down there. If Dearness finds his way out, like I think the Browns can make a run at him. Like I'm not saying he would be interested, but like that's a kind of a situation where it's like that guy's already been in the system, like on top of everything else, and it's like, and that's also if Felton like struggles. So.
And keep in mind, you still got guys like Dalvin Cook is out there as a free agent. Kareem Hunt's still out there as a free Ezekiel Elliott. They're all free agents. So inevitably, wherever they sign, they're going to displace somebody, right? Sure. So there's probably going to be some type of opening or opportunity. I imagine the Browns will be in the news for bringing in somebody at least for a workout.
There's some fun options if he goes to Miami that of the guys that could be cut from Miami. All right, we're going to go to the wide receiver room, and I'm going to turn the heat up. As I already know that I'm turning the heat up right away with my wide receiver room prediction. For one, I am, in fact, convinced that they keep 7. So I do think that this room goes to 7 this time. And I'm unveiling it here. Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, Donovan Peoples-Jones, David Bell, Cedric Tillman, Marquise Goodwin, and Jalen Darden. I keep Jalen Darden over Jakeem Grant. I know a lot of people are going to be very angry with me, and they're going to come at me. And here's the thing. Jalen Darden is very similar to Jakeem Grant. Isn't coming off a torn Achilles and is 25 or 24 as compared to 30. I think he'll be 25 this year, I think. I looked this up, and I can't remember if he is just turned 24 or if he's about to turn 25. Here's the thing. Jalen Darden has been more productive as a wide receiver for the most part than Jakeem Grant as well. I don't see this team keeping a guy who is just a returner. And that's why I don't think Jakeem Grant makes the roster. That's from my standpoint. Is just I think Jalen Darden is a younger version of Jakeem Grant. Yeah, he's not an all-pro returner. He doesn't have that quite the accomplishments. But I think he has a bigger effect in the passing game if they need him. I think he's a more reliable wide receiver. And as a result, I think he ultimately edges them out in a situation where they're going to throw the ball more. So I think they're going to keep 7 as a result. I think it's, hey, we're going to throw the ball. We're going to do a lot more things like that. I think the other 6, I think those top 6 in my order, I think they're locks from my standpoint, unless something happens and shit happens, right? But outside of like an injury or something, or somebody like, I love Mike Harley, for example, coming out of nowhere and just being amazing in camp, barring something like that, I think those top 6 make it. And the question just is there a 7th and who it is? So that's my wide receiver room. I'm going to put Randy's wide receiver room up now, and we'll hear what you guys say.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that there's a 6 that are the locks. Every year in the preseason, somebody, not trying to rip on Mike Harley, but every year there is a guy that kind of like a Mike Harley will go out there and they dominate against somebody who's going to be bagging groceries in 3 weeks, and everybody freaks out and thinks it's the next best thing in the NFL. I just don't think they're going. I don't think that anybody's going to knock any of these 6 off. I think these 6 are locks. They're just from 1 to 6. They're very talented. It's a very good wide receiver room. I mean, I was very adamant about it. I thought people were going crazy thinking DeAndre Hopkins was needed. I was like, you don't need it with this room. His stats compared to over the last couple of years compared to what Amari Cooper did last year. Cooper's been more productive recently, so I don't know why everyone thought that we had to do something about it. This is a very, very talented receiver room. I mean, you look on there and it's like we've all got Marquise Goodwin, 6 basically, and we're also forgetting about David Bell. I think everybody thinks that David Bell was a bust, but no, he was a 3rd-round draft pick that did what 3rd-round draft picks do. He came out there, got a little bit of time. He made things happen when the ball came his way. I think David Bell could be a lot better this year than people are giving credit for. I think in the end, you're going to have some good players that struggle to see the field. I do agree with you that if they keep a 7th, it's going to be somebody like a Jalen Darden. I don't think Jakeem Grant makes it either. Just this, they've done such a good job building this roster that I don't think you have room for a guy who only does one thing that doesn't really help with the base offense, base defense, anything like that. So not very exciting, but that's the 6 I've got.
Hey, we're getting to the offense and defensive lines. Interestingly enough, I think are the most exciting part of this because that's where there's some real battles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
like there's some real battles. All right, so Casey's up next, and we got Casey's. He's got the 7, but he went the Jakeem Grant route. So Casey, let me hear
it. If they're counting on their 7th receiver to be a contributor in a passing game, then everything's went to hell. Straight up.
That's fair.
I think he's a gadget guy who can return, and he can return at an elite level. Can he return from the Achilles injury is what we're going to find out. I'm banking that he can. I don't think that they're, I think if you just look at it, the skill sets are all covered. You know what I mean? You got your Z, you got your boundary guy, you got 2 boundary guys really with Tillman stepping in. Elijah Moore's going to be that move guy. You're going to see him all over the field. I just don't think there's much room for the bottom 2 receivers to really see too much playing time. Goodwin's just going to be a stretch guy, and he's elite at that. That's his one trick, and it's phenomenal. It'll kind of fill that Will Fuller role from time to time when they need a little speed implemented. And I don't think really Grant's going to matter offensively. I think he's going to be there just to be he's going to be the return guy. If he does see the field, it's going to be because Moore's out and they need a little gadget. They need a guy who can run the end around, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. So that's where that's my stance on Jakeem Grant.
Uh-oh. There we go.
Okay. So Jakeem Grant was my second last cut on the team. Actually, honestly, assuming Sione Taki's on PUP, he was my last cut of the roster. And it really hurt me to do it because like Casey, I really feel like Jakeem Grant could add an element to the team. I think collectively we all did. He was a Pro Bowl returner, but it's tough coming off the Achilles, especially when you're a little bit older. And I waffled back and forth. I just think there's too many questions elsewhere on the roster, and so to me, I was looking at this and I was weighing things between Jakeem Grant, Anthony Schwartz, David Bell. We know that Kevin Stefanski wanted David Bell. He's in his 2nd year. I feel like Schwartz has had longer to really give the Browns a reason to keep him on the roster and just hasn't showcased that. And so to me, I just think David Bell's gonna be the guy that is gonna get that opportunity in his 2nd year. And so we're gonna see Schwartz go, and unfortunately we're gonna see Jakeem Grant go. And I always wonder what could have been from that return game. I hope he does make the roster, right? Because he agreed to that restructured deal. And so maybe that raised the chances of him staying around. And so, Casey, I hope you're right. When I looked over the roster, there's so many questions. Not so many, but there's more questions elsewhere to me. Like I think all of us have echoed that this wide receiver room feels like a pretty good one. And so it makes sense that these are the guys you're keeping, and you're going to try to maybe hedge your bets with some upside in a different position room.
Drew says it's interesting. If you're not keeping DPJ, you could use him in the return game. If that is what you're thinking, I mean, it's a good point. MC says he doesn't see Andrew Berry letting DPJ walk, which it being one of his best draft picks, that's actually fair point, I think. I don't know if it's best draft pick necessarily, but it's probably up there. And then Drew making the case for David Bell. He didn't win Big Ten wide receiver of the year over Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave because he was terrible. Like, that's a fair point.
I think the expectations for him as a rookie were just unreal. I mean, I think everyone just expected him to come in and catch 60 passes, and it's like he wasn't going to do that. Not in the offense that they were running with Jacoby Brissett. Not being a third-round pick, he needed a little bit of time, and he did everything that he needed to do. Every time he was on the field, he ran the right routes. He made the catches when the ball came to him. He had great separation and man coverage. I don't understand why some people are down on David Bell. I think he could still be a very good wide receiver.
I'm right there with you. All right, what do we got next? We got tight ends. My favorite part of this exercise is they are all the same. So originally, this is interesting. Originally, I thought that Harrison Bryant was not long for this organization when Jordan Akins signed, just because it felt like kind of one of those easy, like let go of the fourth round player because you got a more athletic player that has experience with your franchise quarterback, which I guess like Harrison Bryant's got a little bit of experience with your franchise quarterback too, but you know what I'm trying to say. Then he signs this deal. Him and Jordan Elliott signed deals that mostly guarantee they're going to be on the roster because they lowered their number, but guaranteed it. And then, and all of a sudden I'm getting Jordan Elliott forced on me again, and I'm not totally happy about it, but hell, I like Schwartz, so maybe he figures it out. I don't know. But I think it's a good tight end room. I mean, you got two really athletic players at the top, and Harrison Bryant, I think he's kind of an average player all around, but he's not a total liability on the field, and he can play a little bit of fullback. So, I mean, there's nothing crazy going on here. David Njoku, Madden ranks him number 9, if that matters to you at all. But I think you got two really good athletes. And David Njoku can block, something that he's really worked his ass off at. But I think you got two really good athletes that really make it interesting when you pair them with the talented wide receiver room that we were just talking about.
Yeah, and I think Harrison Bryant, I felt the same way, that maybe he wasn't going to be around this year. And the biggest reason I felt that way is because this draft was loaded with talented tight ends. But when they didn't, I felt like they could have got somebody, late in the draft that would have been a really solid third tight end. When they didn't draft one, I felt like, okay, they were obviously, believed in him. And if we're being honest, he's probably one of the better number 3 tight ends in the league. He's not going to blow you away, but at the same time, he's made a few good plays throughout his career, and he can start in a pinch. So you can't say that on every team that your third tight end can fill in like that. So I think it is a really good tight end room as well.
Yeah, you know what? Ultimately, we saw Akins be productive with Deshaun. David Njoku caught Deshaun's first touchdown. I just think that both of them have displayed chemistry already, and I don't expect the Browns to play as much two tight end this year as they were emphasizing in previous years. So if your idea is to put more wide receivers on the field, that you're probably not going to need to go as deep. I think a couple years ago we were projecting 4 tight end rooms, and it just doesn't seem like that's the offense or the way that this is going. So I feel pretty good about it, especially that they guarantee Bryant's money. I feel like that it doesn't lock him in, but it certainly makes me confident that he's going to be here. And right, you combine that with not drafting anybody, and this feels like the tight end room to me.
Well, I was with Jacob when they signed Akins. I thought as a foregone conclusion that Harrison Bryant was going to be on his way out. He restructured it, kind of makes it more cap friendly to keep him this year. And if you just look at the skill sets of the tight end room, you got your inline guy, you got your move guy, and you got your H-back. You know what I mean? They kind of fill all the roles there. And if things go to hell in a handbasket and you were without Watson for a game or two, you do have 3 usable tight ends where you could do 13 personnel. And if you wanted to play phone booth football, you know what I mean? Now, I don't think that's going to be an option when Watson's healthy. I think, you might see a little bit of 12 just because you can move Akins out. You can, and not for nothing, Deshaun recruited Akins to this team. So he's going to have a decent role in here, but it's going to be hard to take Njoku off the field. So I do think you see a little bit of 12, more than I think people are thinking, but it's not because they're going to run the football. I think those will be just trying to create mismatches in 12
And I think
as opposed to getting big.
Yeah, and I think you'll especially see it in the red zone because that's where Akins really kind of excelled last year. And I think that trust that Watson has in him, he already showed some trust in Njoku. I think that personnel in the red zone could be really dangerous. Because as much as I like our wide receivers, if you look at all of their numbers historically, none of them really stand out as great touchdown guys. Amari Cooper, as great as he is, 9 touchdowns was the most he ever had in a season. I think DPJ has always had around 3. We don't have that guy that just goes and dominates in the red zone. So I think you'll see more of that 12 personnel where you're going to have the big, tight ends that can go up there and get it, and it could be a mismatch. So I like this tight end room a lot. I really think they did a good job putting it together.
All right. We're going to wrap up the offensive side of the ball. We're going to talk about the big beef. And I'm going to go – I only got 9. So what I was going to say earlier, I had to figure out where to take a player to add a 7th wide receiver.
Yeah.
Originally, all offseason, I was taking it from Harrison Bryant. I was taking the 3rd tight end and just saying, they're just going to roll with 2 tight ends on the active roster. They'll probably put somebody on the practice squad in case they need him, and that's where it's going to come from. So I had to try to figure it out, and I ultimately settled on taking one from the offensive line so that it was at 9 instead of 10, which, So I got Jedrick Wills, Joel Bitonio, Ethan Posick, Wyatt Teller, Jack Conklin, James Hudson, DeJuan Jones, Michael Dunn, and Luke Whippler. Ultimately, those are the 9 that I went with. Obviously, the starting 5, you got Hudson and DeJuan Jones who have, Hudson didn't do it in college, but Jones did, where they both played both tackle spots. So that's really interesting when you're looking at it. And I know DeJuan Jones is a rookie, and James Hudson has been in his first 2 years. But in terms of guys that can play, you have 2 backup tackles that can play both tackle positions. I think DeJuan Jones, he's really big, but I think he could play a little bit of guard. If you really freaking needed him to, I wouldn't recommend it, but if you were desperate enough, I think you could put him in there. At least in the run game, he would just be a lot of fun. I did a film room on DeJuan Jones. It was a lot of fun because when that dude gets out in the open field, it's just like when Wyatt Teller's pulling and Joel Bitonio's pulling on a run play. You're like, nah, I'm good, man. I'm not gonna do that. But I don't think so. You got James Hudson, DeJuan Jones as your backup tackles. They can play both positions. What got really hard for me was only having one backup guard if I do this, and that's Michael Dunn. He can play some center. We know that in the preseason and stuff, he was being kind of groomed to be a backup center. He was kind of your backup center for a lot of last year. After Nick Harris goes down, before he got hurt, and then Froholt ended up playing some center snaps and some things like that, and they motioned a lot of stuff up. So because Luke Whippler ultimately is just a center, and this is where I could see myself being wrong, and them trying to keep a guy like Forbes maybe is the guy, or there's a couple of other guys I guess you could do as a guard position. But for me, you got 2 tackles in the backup end that can then play both spots. You got a guard that can play both guard spots in the center, and you got a true backup center, Luke Whippler, and that's ultimately the group that I came with. So here's Randy, who also went with just 9.
Yeah, and I kind of was thinking along the same lines that you were, that when you look at the backup offensive linemen, you're going to want those guys that are versatile, and that's why you get they're already working DeJuan Jones despite being a rookie. They're already working him on the left side, trying to get him more experience there. I think Michael Dunn is going to make it because he can kind of fill all 3 spots. Luke Whippler, I know he didn't traditionally play guard, but I feel like he could probably play guard better than Nick Harris could in a pinch. And when you go into it's hard. You want to keep 10 offensive linemen. I really wanted to. But when you go into the game and you have your active roster, you usually don't have 10 guys on the active roster. So I feel like their solution to that's going to be having 9 guys. A lot of times they really only go into the active roster with 8 offensive linemen. So to me, I think what you're going to see is they're going to keep it. I wouldn't be shocked if this is what they keep, and then you keep an extra guard or 2 on the practice squad that's ready to come in if there is an injury. But again, Nick Harris, unfortunately, it's a fall for grace from him that he was slated to be the starter last year, and he would have been a really good backup center this year, but Whippler fell to them in the 6th round, and I just feel like he just got a little bit more upside, isn't coming off of an injury, and is under contract longer.
Yeah, and not by much, but a little bit younger, just by virtue of all of that, I think. All right, we got Jack Conklin here. Casey also with 9. Casey.
Yeah, this is where I pivoted and I went Drew Forbes. To me, it's just scary going into it, and you only really have one backup guard. That's the reason 9. I had 10 originally. Ultimately I land. I don't know. We give this offensive line a ton of flowers, but it's best case scenario. We can't act like Jack Conklin isn't injury prone at this point. That's a real thing, And this is Hudson's 3rd year. I think this is a huge year for him. He's got to prove it. He can either take over after this year for Conklin, or they're going to have to move on from Hudson. That's the reason you go and draft the DeJuan Jones. Kind of going to see where he falls. I'm with you guys, though. I mean, I think Whippler could play guard if he had to. I think that's the reason you take him over at Harris. Harris just doesn't have the beef, to play interior guard. So that's just where I land. I think I like the upside of Forbes over Dunn, although Dunn's been consistent, and when he plays, he's actually played well. I just kind of eventually they're going to move on from him, and I think that could be this year.
All right.
So
Nick did go with 10.
I did go with 10. I think I zigged when everybody zagged. I kept Forbes and Dunn. I think there's a few things at play here. Casey, you brought up Jack Conklin's injuries. Well, Wyatt Teller's also been hurt. Jedrick Wills has repeatedly hurt his ankle. I have concerns about the injuries on the offensive line across the board. And so I think if I'm hedging my bet, especially because that final game against the Steelers really rings in my head about they just beat the crap out of Deshaun Watson. And I think the Browns are going to want to avoid that as much as humanly possible. And so I do keep, Forbes has been around the team for a few years now. I think this is his 3rd year.
Several.
Okay. And so he's managed to stick around, and so has Michael Dunn. I just think that, especially when you're in a position where you do have some questions, it makes sense to me to have depth and to have answers in the case that, you don't want, I'm not going to say anybody's name. You don't want an injury to derail your season. And we saw what happened a couple of different times, especially when Posick went down, the run game completely evaporated, and then the whole offense struggled as a whole. I don't want to be in that situation again. So I think this is where I really played it safe. And I said, we're going to have 10 guys. We're going to have depth here. We're going to have guys that have been, both Forbes and Dunn are longish term Browns now. So that it makes sense to keep them. This is where I really went with the depth that I think the Browns need.
Interestingly enough, in 2020, before he sat out the COVID season, I had Drew Forbes beating out Wyatt Teller.
I remember that.
Before he ended up saying, I'm not going to play this year. So,
do you remember that Agent Zero article about Forbes?
Yeah, it was about him. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's always interesting. He can play. He's not been on the field very much. So, all right, let's talk about the other beef in the room.
Okay.
I got 9 here on the defensive line. So, off edge and defensive tackle. Myles Garrett, Zadarius Smith, Ogbo Okoronkwo, Alex Wright, Isaiah McGuire, Dalvin Tomlinson, Siaki Ika, Jordan Elliott, and Maurice Hurst. I actually made this list before Perion Winfrey was cut. I did have Maurice Hurst making it. I thought that the antics of Winfrey, I didn't think there was going to be like another criminal case like there is. I didn't think that was going to happen. But I thought there was a good chance that he was late again, or that he yelled at, you know what I mean? That history was going to repeat itself. And it's funny, someone mentioned, you'd have to be Aaron Donald to deal with this sort of stuff. That was you, wasn't it, Randy? Was that you that said that?
I think it was Casey.
Oh, Casey said it. Sorry, Casey. I'm just stealing your stuff. He's like, whatever. I'm used to it. But I saw if Maurice Hurst is healthy, he was the better player, period. If he's healthy, if his legs, like sometimes you get all these injuries and like your legs are gone and they'll never come back. Chad Pennington just had a noodle for an arm by the time he got to Miami with all of those shoulder surgeries he had with the Jets. So I don't know if Hurst will do it, but like I've seen some videos of this dude like at like nearly 300 pounds running like 15 mile an hour on a freaking treadmill. And I know it's just a workout video, but my God, like you should not be able to do that. Like I blew both of my knees watching you do that. Like I think that the one thing that really interests me is Isaiah Thomas. He could be the 10th defensive lineman easily. I could easily see that. But I think they want Alex Wright and Zadarius Smith to play some on the inside, so they're okay with just the 4 defensive tackles with the 5 edge rushers. But if you're talking about strictly from a pass rush, if this unit is healthy, whew, I'll give the floor because whew is all I got to say.
Yeah, and I started with I went with 10 here, and everything Nick said about offensive line is absolutely right. So I think if they did decide to go 10 offensive linemen, this is probably where I would have to see something cut from my roster. I went 5 and 5 with the defensive tackles, and I think part of the reason. 5 defensive ends, 5 defensive tackles. And I think part of the reason I kind of went deep on defensive tackle is I just don't think Jordan Elliott's that good. I think he's still going to make the team, but I just couldn't get it out of my head that they actually need somebody who can play the 3 tech. So in the end, originally I had Perion Winfrey barely making the team. I didn't think he should. I felt like Tristan Hill was a better player. But I felt like Andrew Berry might have been hesitant to cut him. So I still have Tristan Hill making it. That's really my only difference from yours. I agree with Maurice Hurst. If he's healthy, he's going to be a very, very good rotational player. But I think people are underselling Hill. I think they acted like when he got signed that this is just, some camp body. But he's actually, another guy he was a 2nd-round pick. He has some character concerns, but his aren't concerns like, Perion Winfrey going and getting in trouble off the field. His is he fell asleep during team meeting when Isaiah Thomas was talking, and coaches don't like him because he's got a bad attitude. But it's not, it's maturity, not, he's going to go get himself arrested. But he's got a lot of talent, and if you watch some highlights from him when he was at UCF, he could just absolutely destroy a game plan when he's on. So I think if Jim Schwartz can light a fire under him, and if any coach could, it's going to be Jim Schwartz. So I feel like Tristan Hill has a good shot of making the team. But yeah, I overall really like the defensive line. I like I saw them lining up Zadarius Smith kind of at tackle a little bit during some of the mandatory mini camps with him and Garrett kind of lining up next to each other, and I think there could be some great wrinkles in there. So in the end, I might have one too many, but I feel like with how many issues we've had at defensive tackle, I want to throw as many darts as I can at it. Hopefully somebody will be good.
Hey, man, we're all drinking the Kool-Aid.
We definitely are.
I was drinking Kool-Aid, but my Kool-Aid's gone.
Oh.
I was literally drinking the Kool-Aid. I love this picture. I don't know why, but like I chose this picture and I'm like, he's got a lot of attitude in this picture. Maybe I shouldn't have included it, but it is what it is.
This was the hardest part of this whole exercise for me. It broke my heart to take Isaiah Thomas off this list. I think he could be a very good rotational edge player. It's just with the versatility here, I think it kind of gives you flexibility. With Zadarius and Alex Wright's ability to kick inside, I could see that this could be the room that they go to 10 on. Just given Jim Schwartz's pedigree for rotating people in and out, keeping fresh lineups, I could see that. Ultimately, I fell at 9. And full disclaimer, when I originally sent this list, Siaka Ika wasn't on it. Not because, and I do not agree with the draft pick, but I have no disillusion. I knew he was making the team. Just an oversight by me. But yeah, keeping Thomas off hurt, but they went and got Isaiah McGuire. They're going to see what he can do. Physical makeup, he has everything you want out of an edge. But Randy's right. There is also a chance that there's going to be a defensive tackle on this roster that's not on the roster currently. I mean, these guys are going to get their shot, though. They're going to bring these guys in. Camp's going to happen. They're going to see if they have what they have. And they're really going to find out when they go to Philadelphia for the joint practices. They're going to find out if their defensive tackles are up to snuff, because the Eagles don't play. And that might be the turning point. That if they come out of those practices and they sign someone, then you knew what happened. You know what I mean? But God bless, man. This is a crazy ass room. Zadarius Smith and Ogbo, injecting them to be opposite of Miles, man. Jim Schwartz has coached a crazy amount of talented defensive lines. He ain't ever had this. He ain't never had Myles Garrett. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then Zadarius, the reason I think he's going to be the X factor, because he can move everywhere. You can stand him up in the A gap. You can stand him up on the outside. He can go wide 9. He can play 4-eye, 3-tech. Like, he's going to be that move player. They're going to find mismatches with him. And you already know what you get out of Garrett. This is scary. But those are my 9, and I still think that they bring someone in from the outside.
Okay. I think
He doubled down again, 10 more.
Did I double down again? I thought I had 9. I guess I didn't. Okay. Yeah, you know what? I was waffling a lot, and I guess I am the Isaiah Thomas guy. I just think that a lot of my debate was where Randy's argument for Tristan Hill was, but when I was considering the two players, Tristan Hill and Isaiah Thomas, I feel like we have more known production from Isaiah Thomas than we do Tristan Hill, albeit limited. These are the bottom of the roster guys. I just think we at least saw a little bit that there was to like from Isaiah Thomas last year. And when you're dealing with another position group where there's definitely questions at defensive tackle, I just think it makes sense. Like, okay, if we're going to ask guys to kick inside, if we're going to ask Zadarius and Alex Wright to kick inside, then maybe it makes sense to have another defensive end for when they do. That's just kind of my thought process there. I just think ultimately when you're weighing Thomas and Hill, Thomas gets the edge for me. So barely, but welcome to the roster, Isaiah Thomas. I think that'd be a great story. He's a 7th round pick. He's a guy right at the end. And if you could find a guy who contributes for you in the 7th round, I think that's a home run.
Yeah, I mean, they see the field being good.
I think Lonnie Phelps could have something to say too.
Yeah,
I think that's going to be an interesting thing to watch during camp.
Lonnie Phelps,
Schwartz loves him, so
yeah. And I did a film room on him. He's fun. Like he's got to figure out what he's doing with his hands. Because he really has no idea what he's doing with them. But hey, I mean, Jim Schwartz could probably teach him how to, figure out that aspect of it. And then you get to have a little bit of fun with it. All right, we're on to the linebackers here. I got 6. Taki does not count on that. He'll be on the IR or PUP. There's been some question about Anthony Walker. From everything I've heard, he's going to be fine. They believe he'll be ready for camp. They'll believe he'll be ready for week 1. We'll see. But that, so I'm going with that for now. So Anthony Walker, JOK. Matt Adams is the first one that we really talk about here. He was brought here to play special teams. There's just nothing. Maybe he'll play some linebacker if he needs to, but he's brought here to play special teams. You don't go swing for the fences and get Bubba Ventrone and not give him pieces. So Matt Adams makes the roster. Tony Fields probably gets some run with Taki hurt. Also a special teams player. Jordan Kanasic, a very good special teams player. And then I think Mamad Diabate is also – God, I think 4 of these dudes play special teams. I think Adams, Fields, Kanasic, and Diabate have the skill sets to play special teams. And Fields or Adams especially, him and Kanasic, because Kanasic was the only coverage guy that they had worth a damn last year on special teams. So I just don't think they're going to put a lot on their linebackers. And as a result, you're going to see some guys that are okay, but can also play special teams. And ultimately, it's all contingent on JOK being the guy we think he is and Anthony Walker being healthy. As long as those 2 things happen, then it doesn't really matter kind of the rest of the room. You'll get Taki at a certain amount at a certain time. But I think they're only going to be playing 2 linebackers most of the time. So I don't think there's as huge of a pressure on them to have more than like a traditional 4-3 would have. I think you'll see a lot of 3 defensive backs or 3 safeties and some things like that to kind of combat it, and especially in this division with all the firepower that you see offensively from Baltimore and Cincinnati. I think ultimately, I think it'll be okay.
Yeah, and I went 6 as well. I would love to be wrong about Jacob Phillips and go with Diabate. I feel like I really like him. I like his upside. And we kind of talked about it earlier before the show about Andrew Berry just not being willing to move on from some of his draft picks. And I feel like, maybe I'm worried about that too much. I don't know that he'll cut Jacob Phillips because he was a 3rd round pick. I think Phillips has shown us enough that he's, probably not going to ever develop into the starter like we think. So I'd much rather go with the younger guy, but I kind of went with my gut on this. But also, I agree with a lot of the other things you were saying. Matthew Adams working, he's worked with Bubba Ventrone in the past, so I think he makes it as kind of that special teams ace. What I wonder with this whole thing is, kind of what then happens when Taki comes back, because he was really balling out at the end of last season, so he's going to take a spot from somebody, and I don't know if there's going to be an injury or what, but I think that'll be probably the more interesting thing is to see what happens when he comes back.
All right. Drew says that Walker had a quad injury. I see him closer to the bye week. I mean, most things I've read is 10 to 12 weeks after the surgery is when you can start moving. And that was at the very, very beginning of the year that he got hurt. So I could be wrong, but, we'll see. All right.
I had 6 as well. Boy, they need Anthony Walker. They need his voice. They missed his leadership, and so they definitely need him to be healthy. But as we're talking about, man, 80% of the time, there's only going to be 2 linebackers on the field. The rest of these guys are just here for special teams. Diabate is very intriguing to me because I think that is a sneaky guy they could find ways to get him on the field in sub packages, and he can actually rush the passer. Yes. I think that skill set translates. Adams is definitely the special teams guy. Fields will get some run while Talk's out. But that's the interesting part, though. When Taki comes back, I think that probably kicks Jordan Kunasek out, which sucks because I love that dude. He plays with his hair on fire. Excellent special teams guy. This room is stocked with guys that Bubba Ventrone they're going to be best friends. They're all ace special teams guys. Adams. Fields, he has athleticism to be. He's hit or miss in coverage. Kunasek's solid. We'll see about Diabate. I think he's going to be the X factor. But I believe I have the same 6 as Jacob. Jacob, when Taki comes back, who do you think he kicks out?
It's actually, I think it's probably Diabate. Probably. It's him or Kunasek, probably. It's probably one or the other. Yeah, it's definitely. Yeah, I could see it being either. It just depends on kind of what the other shows, because I neglected to mention it, but his year, this year with, where was he at? Houston. When Diabate was in Houston, I always think he went to Utah, and I know that's not right, but I always think it because he starts at Florida before he goes to Houston. They used him a lot, like a guy we liked in the draft. I know we all like Nick Herbig, and they used him a lot like Nick Herbig, like as that stand up wide 9 outside rusher, like TJ Watt style, like stand up outside linebacker rusher. He's better than you think he was. So
you only think he went to Utah because he did.
I was about to say that.
So it's the other way around. He went to Utah, and I think he went to Houston.
Yeah.
Okay.
He never played at Houston.
Okay. It's the red and white collars. Those 2 schools have similar colors, and I probably said it a million times, and I've said it both ways. There's some episodes I'll tell you he's from Utah, and some I'll tell you he's from Houston. Dadgummit.
Now that's versatility right there.
I know he's playing for two schools at the same time. What? Now that I start talking about the edge rusher part of it, I think I'm with you. I think it is Kanasic. I think if Diabate makes the roster, he just does more, and that's what Andrew Berry values.
So I'll tell you this. This is definitely the part of the roster that I struggled with the most. And I want to add that with Taki on PUP, Tony Fields is supposed to be there. But I definitely think I missed it. I missed the Matthew Adams boat. I was looking at this linebacker room, and I have a lot of questions. I'm not sure how this is going to shake out. I'm really glad
it's not fantastic.
I'm really glad they brought Anthony Walker back. I think JOK has shown us a lot. I know Jason Tarver, the linebackers coach, right? Jason Tarver.
Yeah, he's really good.
He spoke pretty highly of where Jacobs Phillips was at physically recently, and I liked that. I liked that he.
He's hella athletic.
Yeah,
he's just really dumb.
Well, so
that was mean.
I have him on the roster. I think he has shown us enough that they will keep him around. He's got that sideline to sideline speed. He is an athlete. So we'll see where that goes. The linebacker room is tough. So technically, we've got 6 once we have.
Yeah, you would have had 6 if you put Tony Fields on.
And
there.
so I think, but I'm probably just gonna go ahead and concede. It feels like Matthew Adams will make the roster, and my brain just didn't.
Well.
Ignored Matthew.
With Matthew Adams and then a guy that I'll talk about here in just a second, a lot of people just didn't look deep enough to realize that they were really good special teamers.
Yeah.
And I get it, because the first thing I do is I go to PFF. If I don't know who you are, I'm going to go to PFF and let me see how many snaps you played. Were you a pass rushing tackle, linebacker, all that. That's the first thing I do. And it just jumped out immediately that he had really high special team, but I'm also a nerd and I'm obsessed with it. So it's okay. But Drew is sliding in here that apparently after the sale of the Washington Commanders, there's the possibility of a name change.
It should, because that name is god awful.
It is so bad.
Man, okay.
It's so bad.
The Washington football team was amazing.
It was so much better.
It should have just been the Washington football team. It was great. I loved it. I think their team is good.
It was way better than the Commanders. I mean, they had a few decent options in there, and they were like, let's pick the absolute worst one. Let's go with the commies. Come on.
I love when people call them commies, and our good friend Drew normally does. So missed opportunity there, Drew.
I can bash on them all day, but did you see when they sold the mug and they had the silhouette of the wrong state?
No.
They actually had Washington State. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to look that up. They were selling it at their gift shop, their pro shop, and it was it was a silhouette of the state of Washington, and it said Washington Commanders.
It's almost
they also
as bad
got
as what
they also got the Super Bowl year wrong on their team crest when they introduced it. So.
No.
The final most fun thing, a friend who's been on here before, Meredith Kane, tweeted out the IPA celebrating Daniel Snyder's leaving.
It's called Dan is gone.
Which, wow, how much do you gotta hate that guy to make a beer celebrating him leaving?
And they snuck in a $60 million fine on the way out. I was like, yes.
At least it's something. Overall, it equates to about 1% of the sale price. I mean, it's crazy to think about $60 million as 1% of something, but at least it's something. I was glad to see that, and so
at least it wasn't $6 million, because that would have really been nothing. On the day that he got $6 billion, they fined him $6 million. I'd be like, this is a joke.
And I'm rooting. You know what? I hope the Commanders do well this year. You got Jacoby Brissett there. I might start, will start. I don't know, but I'm going to be.
They're going to start Sam Howell, which is a decision.
So they're just. It's not even a camp competition.
Probably not.
Woof.
It should be.
It should be.
He'll start because they'll bench Sam Howell. He will.
And with Jacoby Brissett's track record, he'll win. 4 out of every 12 starts. So that'll be fantastic.
All right. We didn't need that.
Shots fired.
Shots fired.
I mean,
I've never understood why people put Jacoby Brissett on a pedestal and then want to just destroy Baker
Right.
Mayfield. Baker
Okay.
We're not
Mayfield's
doing
career
this.
record.
Oh,
Career
We're
record
not
was
doing
way better than Jacoby Brissett, but because he was smiling and acting like a goofball, people were saying, we need to retire the number
He's
7.
adorable.
Okay,
That
maybe
doesn't win games, and neither does
that's
Jacoby Brissett.
that's probably too far. But let's be fair here. There were so many games last year.
He
The
did get
Jets
let
come to
down.
mind.
That they
Falcons,
almost won until he threw the ball to the wrong
the
team.
Chargers. I
Yeah,
can't
but that Jets pick doesn't count.
Yeah,
That
'Cause
one
it's-
doesn't, but they were the Chargers game and the Falcons game. He single-handedly lost, and we want to blame the kicker because he didn't miss the kick to bail Jacoby Brissett out after throwing the interceptions in the fourth quarter.
Anyway, so we're on corners.
So quarterbacks. I was going to
Cornerbacks.
really venture down a hole. I'm sorry.
I know you were. That's why I was trying to argue with you. Anyway, I'm going to go 6. So I'm going to go Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome, Martin Emerson, AJ Green, Cam Mitchell, and the other special teamer, Mike Ford. So Mike Ford is really interesting in the sense that he's spent time in the slot. Now, granted, not much, and he wasn't great. But, excuse me, considering there's not a true slot corner on this roster, it makes it a little bit interesting. Just from the sense that, like, if someone gets hurt, there's a good chance that Ford could play some snaps there. But this is a dude that's a really good special teamer too. So him and Matt Adams were the two for me that, like, Bubba Ventrone has probably been, like, outside of them just getting hurt, I think. Bubba Ventrone's been like, these are my guys. Like, I need something to work with. So that's why he sneaks on here at 6. I always liked 10 DBs, and I tried to do 5 and 5, but I couldn't cut AJ Green. I couldn't do it because I still think he's really good. I really like him for what he can be. And it's going to be interesting. I think Denzel and Newsome, and I think AJ Green may play some slot snaps this year as well. So I think that gets really interesting. And Cam Mitchell is interesting because I think he can play in the slot. Hasn't done it a ton either, but I think he can. I think you've got 3 at the top of this room. You've got 3 pretty good corners. They're all outside corners, but you got 3 really good corners. And then AJ Green's as good of a backup reserve corner as I think you can have when you're talking about, like, your 4th corner. When you're talking as 4th corners go, I think AJ Green's pretty good. So I really think that this is probably the deepest. I don't know. I love edge. This is there, man, in terms of most talented position on the team. I think this is right there near the top. I think edge is probably still better, but I think corner is going to give it a run for its money.
I had a really hard time cutting Mike Ford for all the reasons that you said. If there's 54 players on the roster, I would have made it. I would have had to make cuts at safety, and I just didn't want to go shorter there. Didn't want to go shorter at linebacker. It was really, really tough. I think I could definitely see being wrong there because I think Mike Ford they knew special teams was an issue. That's why they went out and got Bubba Ventrone. That's why they went and signed Adams and Ford. So that was probably one of the hardest cuts that I had to make, which is, it's. Everything you said about him is absolutely right, but there really is a lot of depth here. I think the top 4 are set. I think Cameron Mitchell, is going to make the team. I think they kind of like him, almost in like that MJ Stewart type role where they could kind of play him in the slot, maybe play him a little, drop him back at safety a bit. And if he does well enough at safety, maybe they do go thinner there and keep Ford, but. Yeah. Until I see a little bit more of what's going on in the roster, I went with 5 here and had to make that cut, which I don't feel good about at all.
Ooh. The Browns worked out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 players today for anybody that was curious.
Okay. Well, they do have an open roster spot.
It becomes really interesting, including a tight end from Ohio State. Anyway, Marcus Baugh, if anybody's curious who that was.
I don't hate AJ Green, but he did not make my list. And I think as far as I don't really see him as a slot. To me, I think Mike Ford can play slot as well. I think it's Ford and Mitchell as the slot if they have to go to it, if they're not traveling. But I think that's what you're going to see this year. I think you're going to see them travel. I don't think you're going to see just static right, left, and slot. I think they're going to move around. And I think Emerson can play slot against bigger receivers. I think if you're matching him up with a big, if they try to go big slot, because he faces the quarterback anyway. He isn't a turn and bail guy, you know what I mean? And he can trigger downhill in the run game. I think Cameron Mitchell's a hell of a steal. I think here in 4 years we look back, we're gonna be like, how did they sneak him where they got him? You know what I mean? I think that was a very solid draft pick. Ford's brought here to play special teams, but he can play slot. I did go 5 and 5, and this is my 5 corners. AJ Green will find a home somewhere, and he'll play. He's a good corner. They got 3 outstanding outside corners, man. I didn't have room for AJ Green on the list.
That makes sense. I get where you're coming from. I debated too, Jacob, when Jacob pulls up my
Mariano's reading tweets.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. I think I'm zigging a little bit. I actually feel like the Browns secondary, I mean, the corner room is probably if it's not their strongest room on the team, it's certainly one of them. And I just feel like if the Browns can either stop the run or score points in a big way, this group is really going to shine. And that's ultimately why I kept 6. I just feel like they're all talented players. And when you know that Mike Ford's been brought here for special teams, I can't cut AJ Green. I just feel like he's been productive when he's been given opportunities. He's not amazing, but he's somebody that I say, okay, if so-and-so, sprains their ankle and AJ Green's got to play, I don't feel terrible about that.
Or
I
if
feel
someone pulls their hamstring, because that seems to always happen to Browns corners.
Never forget the
3 of them. It's usually 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah, why do we even have hamstrings?
Was it
Screw them, cut them off.
2019, where like basically the whole corner room pulled their hamstrings and were out for about a month?
Yeah, I think that was 2019.
I'm still scarred from that.
It was like the whole team.
Like,
we had like freaking
Greedy Williams, Denzel Ward, all of them were just
all of them. And so
nursing the hammies.
Was that Robert Jackson that had to start a playoff game?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Andrew Sendejo was just talking the other day about.
Oh God, don't you?
I'm just saying, they made the playoffs.
He's an excellent follow on Twitter. If you're not following him, he is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's in on the joke.
He is.
He loves it.
The joke. Good for him. Anthony Schwartz is not.
He's like, they're never going to make the playoffs without me. And I'm like, yeah, let them hear it.
Somebody asked a question about who's your favorite, Browns legend, and I put Andrew Sendejo, and he retweeted it. And so
good for you.
He loves it. He loves it. I love that he just goes along with it. Like, yep, that's me.
To summarize, I just feel like this list of 6 is a group of talented players that we know. In addition with Mike Ford, that with the special teams angle. So I sacrificed it on linebackers. I went with it in the corner room. I just feel like this is a solid as a list as you could ask for. And so I couldn't cut any of them. I couldn't do it. And so I cut the 6.
Can I do a segment that we haven't done in a while before we do safeties? Because this episode has just ran off of an absolute cliff. And because this has to do with something we were just talking about. It's time for story time with Jacob. So one time we was watching a game at my dad's house, and Sendejo did something Sendejo-like, and my dad yelled at the TV, as he does, and he was like, "Oh, Sendejo!" And my stepmom, who was in the bedroom watching TV, said, "What? What do you mean? Like, why are you yelling what?" And we're like, "What?" And then we were like, "What?" And she says, "I thought you just said, hey ho." and I said, "And you answered to that?" And so for the rest of the season, anytime we commented about Sendejo, we would say, "A-ho."
Okay.
That's a thing that happened.
Quintessential. The Andrew Sendejo experience was when he gave up some giant pass play against the Jaguars.
And then picked off the 2-point conversion.
It was just like the lowest of lows and the highest of highs, and that was that season, and that was Andrew Sendejo.
It really was. I got my second. Are you ready for my second UDFA to make the roster?
Ooh, baby.
Ronnie Hickman rounds out the safety room. You know what's interesting? They don't have a lot of safeties on the roster.
No.
There's two positions they don't have a ton of on the roster: safety and linebacker. Because like I was looking at it just to make sure I didn't miss anybody, and there wasn't anything that like some guy that could potentially sneak up. You know what I mean? Like that could just potentially sneak up on you and have a good camp and make the roster and all that stuff. And I was like, man, there's not even that many to. The top three are locks, barring injury: Juan Thornhill, Grant Delpit, Rodney McLeod. I think Rodney McLeod. I think it's the popular thing to say Rodney McLeod is the underrated signing because I think he is. He plays all over the field. You know what he is? He's the third safety that Joe Woods always wanted and never got. Like a guy that can actually play in the slot and play in the box and play like all over the field. Because I think he can even play some free safety, and like they thought John Johnson could do those things and he couldn't. Interestingly enough, Joe Woods was so bad he made him unemployable. That's weird. I still can't figure out John Johnson doesn't have a job. But I think Juan Thornhill finally having a free safety. I think Delpit gets extended this year. I think he's really good and underrated. I think these four, I just like Ronnie Hickman because I ended up rewatching some of his film and I liked him more than I thought. He's actually better in coverage than you think he is. Just put him in the box though. Don't put Ronnie Hickman back deep. Don't do that. Not a good idea. But because of the strength of the corner room and the fact that these top three guys do everything you need from safety room, I think it's a pretty good room.
Couple things before I jump on here and get into this. One is another Andrew Sadeo thing. I think he also broke up the 2-point conversion against Pittsburgh in week 17 when they were trying to tie it. So I think it was like a 24-22 win, 22-20 win, something like that. But he broke up that 2-point conversion. So the guy's a legend. Yeah, absolute legend. Yeah, and Jacob, I think you're right. I absolutely love Juan Thornhill. Oh, another thing I was going to say, John Johnson. I think one of the reasons he's unemployed right now, I think it was left a really sour taste in a lot of people's mouths when he went out and called out. You know, he was pointing fingers about who missed plays. He was like, I think he was trying to point the finger at Grant Delpit.
He was,
but then he went and called out teammates saying you need to give more effort. You need to work harder, be committed. In the very next game, he held up and didn't go for a tackle on Gus Edwards, who ran a touchdown. And so I think calling out teammates and going out on the field and not giving your all, I think that has a lot to do with why he's not signed. That's just my opinion. Anyway, I absolutely love the Juan Thornhill signing. That was one of my favorite signings of the offseason, and I still don't even think he was the best safety that they signed this offseason. I think Rodney McLeod is just fantastic. And what's even better is he's worked with Jim Schwartz in the past and won a Super Bowl with him. So I think a lot of those communication issues that we saw last year probably are not going to happen because you have a veteran guy out there who can kind of be a solid voice. Ronnie Hickman, I feel like he can be what Ronnie Harrison was in 2020. He can be that guy that kind of plays in the box there, kind of moves around a lot. Harrison was really exciting to watch that year. He fell off after that. But I think Hickman can do that. DeAnthony Bell, if they decided to go 4 on here, I think DeAnthony Bell is the one who doesn't make the cut. I just have him on here. I think it's my own insecurities, and I'm afraid to go only 4 at safety. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if they did only go 4 at safety. But for now, I've got them going 5. And that's my list there.
Everything Randy just said. But Juan Thornhill, man, getting that true post safety, that was so huge. Just as much cover one as Schwartz has ran in the past, to have that true post, that's a must. McLeod can kind of do a little bit of everything, and he speaks Schwartz, massive. I like DeAnthony Bell, and I kind of like DeAnthony Bell to be the backup to Grant Delpit as far as that roving guy in the box. Hickman, I am worried about some of his coverage skills. I keep having nightmares of the Senior Bowl, man. I just saw so many times where he was just getting cooked. But they're not going to ask him to do that. He's going to make his bones on special teams. They're going to bring him up. I think that I just think that the bottom of the safety room is so weak. To be honest with you, I think that he has a really good chance to make this roster. I don't know if it's going to be D'Anthony Bell or Hickman if they go to 4. I'm not sure how that falls. I just have them keeping 5. I just think Schwartz likes to have that position stocked, and Hickman has upside. I think that's what keeps him on the roster.
All right.
And that leads perfectly into where I went, because since I went 6 corners, I went with 4 safeties, and I waffled a lot between D'Anthony Bell and Ronnie Hickman. I saw Jack Duffin say the Browns really like Hickman, and that I was thinking about it, and D'Anthony Bell made the team last year, and when you're an undrafted free agent, I feel like your road to making the team is tougher. I feel like when they know Bell, the Browns seem to have a bias towards guys they know. And so for me, when I'm picking between D'Anthony Bell and Ronnie Hickman, I think that was the tipping point for me. I would have felt better with 5 safeties, but just the way that my roster, when I hedged with offensive line and defensive line, there's just no room. You really feel the tightness of a 53-man roster when you get to the end of the safeties was my last position group, and I'm just like, are we originally when I was talking to Jacob about it, I just had the top 3 guys, and I was like, there's no way. I looked at it again, and I was like, there's no way they only keep 3 guys. I love the McLeod edition. I think that's probably one of my favorites. Just a guy who's a little bit older, but still just so solid. And I feel like you've added a ton of veteran. Now, I agree with you guys that the bottom of the safety room has a lot of questions, but you've added 2 guys that have been there, done that, veterans, Super Bowl experience. I'm really excited about that. And when you put those 2, McLeod and Thornhill, next to Delpit, I think that should be a room that should lift him up rather than whatever was going on with John Johnson. So I am excited from that perspective. And you could tell me Hickman makes the roster, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised. I could have flipped a coin. I picked D'Anthony Bell.
There you go. And that's it. That is the 53-man roster. I think we all agree that the 3 special teamers, Hewlett, York, and Bojorquez, barring injury, will be the guys from that side. We ran a little bit long. I figured we'd run a little bit long. But because of that, we got to get out of here because I got to go play Diablo 4. So we'll let the floor for Randy and Casey. Let everybody know where they can find all your stuff.
You can find me all over the place, running my mouth. Dog Pound Daily is my primary home. I'm usually putting content out there quite a bit, but if you want to venture out and check out some other teams, I write for the Dallas Cowboys on the Landry Hat. I write for the New Orleans Saints on Who Dat Dish. Occasionally, you'll see me pop up on Toro Times talking about the Houston Texans. So, like I said, I'm out there just, I would say dropping knowledge, but it's not knowledge. It's usually falsities and stupidity. So you can find me out there. And then you can follow me at rgurzi81 on Twitter. I'm very, very good at finding out what free agents are visiting at the airports, visiting teams by finding them at the airport.
He is.
At the rental counter.
Really
so
good.
yeah. So follow me there, and I can usually get you some really good info on free agents.
It's the same picture.
One guy actually went in there and geocached it, and it's this picture was taken in Boston. It's not.
Are you so mad?
And then another guy put a bunch of warning symbol or he's some weird thing, exclamation points, and he was like, I found this picture that he posted last year, and he said it was Andrew Berry in Houston, and I was like, my God, they're on to me.
Oh my God. Casey.
Well, Dog Pound Daily is the label that pays. You can find me on Twitter at Casey_Kinnamon. And you guys are going to ride with 6, and I'm riding with Jordan Addison.
Ooh.
No, I'm not.
With that being said, you know what, guys? We appreciate the hell out of all of you. If you would click that like and subscribe button on YouTube, you would make us very happy, and we would love to continue bringing all this content to you. You know we'll be here anyway, but we're chasing a dream, and we appreciate all your support and all your help. That being said, this has been episode 111, of the Barking Brown Show. I'm going to try to do this. I'm Nick. That's Jacob. There's Casey. And there's Randy. I did it. Go Browns.
Just so you know, Milk was a bad choice.